Now, he's usually one of those faceless men, a senior Liberal power broker who decides prime ministers and premiers, who backs people into parliament or boots them out. Michael Photios' influence in the Liberal Party is undeniable, even since he officially stepped back as the leader of the moderates and handed that baton over to Matt Keane. He's controversial, feared, well-connected and powerful. He's an enigma. And he never, ever agrees to media interviews, preferring to operate in the shadows out of the public eye until now, until this week. And Michael Photios joins me live. Michael, in a TV studios, in front of the cameras and the lights. What a rare sight. Thank you for coming in.
Delighted to be here.
Now, look, I want to start with where the latest count is up to for the state election, because it does seem like the Minns majority is narrowing.
It's actually fascinating, Sharri. I mean, the Labor Party were understandably celebrating with champagne, in their case beer, out of Cogra, a very big landslide election.
No champagne inside?
Yeah, indeed. But that landslide has now turned into a trickle, and the government's going to be there in a minority status. They will not get a majority in either house. That's not the way a government wants to get elected at the beginning. That's the way you finish. In fact, they'll probably have the kind of seat configuration in reverse that we had at the end of the 12-year term, not the start.
Yeah. Now, that's not to take away from the fact there were massive swings against the Liberal Party in some previously safe seats. But does it make you wonder that if Gladys Berejiklian was still the Premier with a result like this, she might have got the Liberals back into government?
Gladys Berejiklian, like Dom Perrottet, in fact, like Mike Baird and Barry O'Farrell before them, was a phenomena. I mean, she was standalone a phenomena. What she did during COVID made her really an Australian icon, and she was much loved across party lines, which was the really impressive feature. For her to go on the basis of an ICAC inquiry that was orientated to finding scandal elsewhere and stumbled upon her is a tragedy of politics and of the national interest.
Well, so two things. Could she have won this election then?
Well, Gladys could have and should have won the election. It was a hard task for Dom Perrottet, but I do want to say this. Dom Perrottet started out with a level of expectation in the coalition that was far surpassed by his performance.
Yes, no,
he's been really tremendous.
He did very well.
He and Matt Keane were a good team, conservative, moderate, seamless working.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to Matt Keane in a moment. But look, I want to ask you more about the ICAC, because it has destroyed 3 Liberal premiers now. None of them have been found to be corrupt. I very much doubt Gladys will have any findings made against her. And even if they are, everyone knows in this city that she was not corrupt. Dominic Perrottet had the chance. He could have come in with goodwill behind him and done reform of the ICAC. He didn't. It does need to be reformed, doesn't it? Because it's destroying innocent lives.
Well, there are at least 2 things that need to be addressed in a reform process. But the challenge is you'll never get any reform through the Legislative Council. You just won't get it. Now you probably wouldn't even get it through the Legislative Assembly because the government doesn't run the parliament as things currently stand.
No, but coming to the reform, when Dominic Perrottet took over from Gladys, that is the point.
Was the moment in time, and there were lots of people like Margaret Cunneen and others who were in a very healthy way calling for the reform that it needed. There are 2 issues, I'd say. Firstly, on the one hand, this perhaps might surprise you, I think it needs to be better resourced, because one of the great tragedies is that it is taking far too long.
Yeah.
It's an injustice, frankly, coming from an instrument of justice. It's an injustice to take so long to make their conclusions. I mean, Gladys has seen, and we've seen off Dom Perrottet in his tenure as Premier, and we still haven't landed on what she's done wrong. The report hasn't been handed down.
Yes, exactly.
The second issue, I'd say, is that it's politicised as an organisation, and it does the ICAC a disservice to have all its inquiries conducted publicly. They should deal with these matters behind closed doors when and if, on the same basis of the administration of law in every other court in the country, when there's a prima facie case and they want to proceed to a court, then the matter should be heard in public. At the moment, I could make an allegation about you or vice versa. The mere allegation is substance enough.
But I take your point.
But the point, a mere allegation is substance to then proceed with a whole inquiry.
Exactly. Now, on my program last night, I broke the news that Matt Keane is looking at 2 seats in Canberra in the future, not right now, but before the next federal election. One of them is Bradfield, should Paul Fletcher choose not to recontest the next election. The other is potentially North Sydney. Would you support Matt Keane moving to Canberra?
I think Matt Keane would do an outstanding job in Canberra. Dom Perrottet, Gladys Berejiklian, Bruce, Mike Baird and Josh Frydenberg would make for a tremendous team taking on Teals across the country. I think Matt, working closely with and loyally with Dom, has changed the face of the way the Liberal Party is seen in New South Wales. Not enough to win us a 16-year term, only Angela Merkel can get that, but he successfully changed things such that we beat the Teals on their own territory, and I think he would beat a Teal were he to run in North Sydney. Paul Fletcher is doing a great job, and I think you'll find Paul Fletcher's here to stay for some time.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to get back to your argument that you've just put there about Matt Keane taking on the Teals and being, you know, the type of figure who should be at the heart of the Liberal Party. But out of that bunch that you've just mentioned, the former premiers who you'd like to see move to Canberra, which one of them do you think should be a future Prime Minister?
Well, I think all of them could be. We're spoilt for talent. We're spoilt for choice. The only thing we really want is a bit more hunger from each of them to take up the challenge.
To actually do it. Now, let's get to the Teals question, right? Because this is a controversial point. This is a point that people in the Liberal Party are debating whether or not Matt Keane has been a disservice. Alan Jones was on the show, was on Andrew Bolt's program last night, and he strongly argued, along with Andrew Bolt, that the party needs to get back to its conservative base that would appeal to Western Sydney, that would appeal to the regions. And, you know, their position was that Matt Keane, as an example, and other so-called moderate Liberals are taking the party too far to the progressive or what they would call socialist left. What's your response to this?
Well, I'd look your listeners in the eye on this and say, particularly to Conservatives, who are a vital part of the party, that they need to be respected, included and supported as part of a party that brings both moderates and the Conservatives together. One of the big challenges out of the lessons of history in the last 12 years was that a party that can't govern itself can't govern the state. And Barry O'Farrell brought the moderates, led by me at the time, and David Clark with the Right Together, and that gave us a landslide victory.
But it's not just the figures, it's the policies as well. You know, you saw this Liberal government, the former Liberal government with Dominic Perrottet and Matt Keane, had more progressive policies even than the Labor Party. You had Chris Minns saying he would buy back and keep running the Eraring, the country's largest coal-fired power station, if that's what it took to keep the lights on.
Well, I think we're going to talk to the base in New South Wales, not just the base in the party to win an election. And if you combine the Liberal, Labor, National, Green and Teal vote, it's over 90, it's nearly 90%, 5% of the electorate, and all of those parties supported net zero. 1.8%, almost an asterisk, voted for One Nation. Okay. Shooters imploded. Clive Palmer didn't run.
I want to
a great opportunity for One Nation.
We're quickly eating up our time, and I want to get to a few other very quick questions with you while you're here. Look, Peter Dutton isn't popular in Victoria, not popular in parts of Sydney. He's the polar opposite of Matt Keane. Do you think he will ever be Prime Minister?
I think Peter Dutton can be. I think Peter Dutton is a much maligned and misunderstood figure. Whenever I've talked with him privately and personally, I've found him engaging, affable. He's not the man many think he is.
But isn't that a problem then if he's not coming?
He's been twice married. Yeah. He's not a Christian that wears his heart on his sleeve. He's much more broadly representative of the secular community. I think if and when Labor will lose the voice...
You think they'll definitely lose the voice?
If and when they lose the voice, I mean, that will be a very, very serious moment in time for Albo's leadership. And that would be a seismic change. I hope for the sake of the nation we can come together on this and get the wording right. Yeah. But if it doesn't come off, there could be a real change in the dynamic at the federal level.
A couple of other things. The polling I've seen privately from the New South Wales campaign is that women in that 18 to 54 age bracket were really not supportive of the Liberals. We know this was also the case with the federal Liberal campaign. Why is the party not resonating with women?
Well, at the federal election, there were three big reasons for the shift. There was clearly and undeniably an anti-Morrison vote.
But it was the same at the
women were concerned about climate change, and women wanted women's issues treated properly. Everything from Christine Holgate to Brittany Higgins. Now, at the state level, that was less impactful, and that's one of the reasons the Teals lost. One, we didn't have a federal ICAC, we've got one at the state level. On climate, we were attuned to their views. On women's issues, we had budgets that responded.
Yeah.
And I think Dom Perrottet was attractive, frankly,
Yeah.
as a family man in that context.
Okay.
And that brought back some of the base.
Final question. A tough one for you, Michael Photios. Genuinely, part of the reason that you stepped back as leader of the moderates is because of the perception that there was this unhealthy conflict of interest where you, as a lobbyist, were representing clients who you then could put pressure on ministers who you helped get into those positions. Did you ever abuse this power?
It's a great question. Firstly, the country doesn't have first and second class citizens, Sharri. Everyone in a democracy has got a right to do what they do. We all get the vote. We're all entitled to be a member of a political party, and we've all got a voice. I operated with the utmost integrity, so much so that, notwithstanding the fact I've got probably more enemies than friends, no one's made an allegation against me at any point in time. My integrity's in place. I've done the right thing, conform with the law, beyond what the law does. I apply the Daily Telegraph test, the pub test of what we do, so that there won't be any question. Let me give you an example in conclusion. Success fees, as a lobbyist, are engaged, are legally permissible at the federal level. Almost every lobbyist does it. We don't. We don't. So I can tell you, I don't think there's really a conflict of interest.
All right.
I'm very, very comfortable with what we've done.